Good morning from WKYT News. I'm Bill Bryant, and we hope you're enjoying this weekend before Christmas, and we welcome you to Kentucky Newsmakers. Richmond's new police chief will be joining us shortly. Chief James Ebert will be along. First, though, the Lieutenant Governor of the Commonwealth is here. Jenean Hampton is the first African-American elected to statewide office in Kentucky. She's also the first woman elected Lieutenant Governor since Martha Lane Collins in 1979. And during her first year in office, which is just wrapped up, Lieutenant Governor Hampton has been busy traveling the state often and speaking to young people about opportunity in Kentucky and in America. Hampton has her own inspiring story. She was born in Detroit's inner city. She worked in banking and automotive industries while also saving up money for college. She earned an industrial engineering degree and then joined the Air Force, serving our country in some of the world's hot spots at the time. Lieutenant Governor Jenean Hampton starting her second year in office and joining us on Kentucky Newsmakers. And we're delighted you're here. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it very much. As we said, you have your own compelling story, and I know that many people are eager to just have you come and speak to them and hear that. They want to know about that. So as you travel across the Commonwealth, what are the kinds of things you're talking about?
Well, yeah, I'm actually asked by teachers and youth group leaders to come share my personal story with the kids, with the students of all ages, first graders, usually up to high school, and just to share the details of rising from poverty and some of the speed bumps I hit and the decision points that I made. And so I talk about that. I talk about my time in the military, what I took away from that, and I talk about working my way through school, and just I talk about growing up and the influence that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had on me, and even some of the bullying, so to speak, the peer pressure to fail from other kids my age when I was younger, and just rejecting all these negative voices and just persevering.
How did you do that as you were, as there were ceilings and there were those who would stand in your way?
Well, the biggest lesson for me was not focusing on the package I'm in. So I don't really see myself as Jenean Hampton black person, Jenean Hampton woman. I'm just Jenean Hampton with all these varying interests and talents, and I focus on that, and I focus wherever I've worked. I've focused on the mission, whatever that was, whether it was the mission of the Air Force or the mission of the box plant that I worked in, and that just takes all of the outward appearances out of the equation.
Having won control of the State House now at this point, Republicans now have full control in Frankfort at the moment. Does that also come with responsibility to lead and to have some checks and balances on what could almost be absolute power at this point?
Well, it always does. It truly always does. Even before we flip the House, there's a responsibility to lead and to do what's best for Kentucky. And I tell you, I've been honored to serve with Governor Bevin this past year. It's been a fantastic year, despite some of the roadblocks, and we've gotten a lot done, far more than we ever thought we would. And so we're really looking forward to the next year.
You and Governor Bevin promised to make Kentucky more business friendly. There's an effort to identify burdensome regulations. That is one of the first things that he did. Do you think Kentucky is becoming a better place to do business and to employ people?
I do. I believe that, and I'm hearing feedback from business people, from entrepreneurs. I spoke to one entrepreneur who said that he was the most optimistic he'd been in the 20 years he's lived in Kentucky.
What do business people tell you that have been those roadblocks? What are the kinds of things that have been in their way to create jobs? Well,
one of the biggest issues that they face, and I hear this all over the Commonwealth, is the workforce, the quality of the workforce. There's a high quality of the workforce, but they're having a tough time finding people who can pass the drug test, finding people with some of the specific skills that they need. And so that's why Governor Bevin in the budget earlier this year focused so much on workforce development. And you're hearing that a lot, you're hearing that term a lot. It's coming from several of the cabinets. We're working together, the labor cabinet is rolling out an apprenticeship program. We're even seeing programs in the high schools, some of the tech schools, to feed people into the business sector that they need, with the skills that they need.
We hear business leaders in the Chamber of Commerce talk about soft skills, that those students and early adults, in many cases, need to acquire some basics like showing up on time.
That's right.
And being presentable when they do interviews.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
You hear some of that?
Absolutely. I hear that quite frequently. And one of the things when I talk to students, I'm focused on, there's 3 E's, I call it: entrepreneurship, education, and what I call being an example. But the entrepreneurship piece, I started the first annual Lieutenant Governor's Entrepreneurship Challenge, open to 9th through 12th graders. It's kind of a Shark Tank pitch contest. And what that does is I just want to get the kids to think about the possibility of running their own business. And even if they never do that, they'll bring those sensibilities to wherever they do work. And it's a different sensibility. It's a sense of ownership of wherever you are that helps the company and themselves thrive. And so, I'm really excited to see, as I visit more schools, the spirit of competition is starting to spread, because every high school is telling me that the winning team is at their school.
Do you find that they want to be in business? Do they want those kinds of responsibilities?
Some of them do. Some of them don't know what it entails, and so I tell them this is the time. It's a safe time, because you're actually not going to start your business, but this is the time to at least explore what's involved should you think of starting your own business somewhere down the road. And they're high schoolers are perfectly capable of doing the type of analysis that's needed.
We keep learning just how deep the numbers are with this pension liability issue in Kentucky. $32.7 billion in unfunded liability going forward. How much, to what extent is that a real burden on the state's economy?
It's a great burden, because what most people don't know, that Kentucky's bonds were downgraded 3 times in the past about roughly 3 years, and the sole reason that was cited for downgrading our bonds was the lack of a comprehensive plan to address the shortfall. And so that's why when Governor Bevin and I ran, that was a key issue for us, is doing something to arrest that debt. And in the budget, there's a $1.5 billion down payment to start plugging that hole. And so we know we need a solid plan to address it, not just for the sake of the state's bonds, but also we owe it to the teachers and other state employees who've been promised this, their retirement. And if we don't do what we need to do to become more solvent, then that's at risk. And so I'm hearing from teachers they're very happy.
And there is a talk next year of a more comprehensive effort to get it all in order. Also, the governor speaks of tax reform and trying to overhaul the state's tax code. Now, governors have been saying that for about 20 years. They'd like to get that done. It's a tall task. He talks about the possibility of a special session to do that. Is it likely it will take that extra time to do that kind of thing?
Well, we'll see how it shakes out. I know we've been trying to move more efficiently and effectively. Before I ever ran for office and I was watching Frankfurt, it just drove me crazy how the time, how slowly things moved. And so I think we can speed the process up a little bit if we're diligent at it. Hopefully we won't have to go to a special session.
The healthcare situation, and there are question marks out there after the election of President-elect Trump, who says there will be changes. Of course, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says the Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, will be repealed. The President-elect says that there will not be a gap in what there is now and whatever there is designed to come after that. But do you think that is changing to some extent the calculations that the governor made about some of the health care changes he wanted to make in the state? I
don't think so. We always wanted to move people from the Connect web exchange to the federal web exchange, and it depends on whatever they decide to do at the federal government level. Obviously we're beholden to that, but the whole system was doomed to fail from the start, because you cannot have the federal government running healthcare systems and making decisions for individuals. I think at the end of the day, individuals are best suited to make decisions for themselves and their families. And I believe, as the governor does, a competitive more competitive driven system is the way to go. And so, but we'll see what we need to do to get there.
You are a veteran, and you've gone to countless veterans events around the Commonwealth. I know you always enjoy getting those invitations.
I do.
You can't make all of them, but you have to make choices. Does Kentucky do enough to recognize the tough sacrifices made by people who've put their lives on pause to serve our country?
Well, there's certainly events all over the Commonwealth to recognize veterans. I know we had a group of veterans, some World War II veterans. We actually hosted them at the mansion earlier this year. We got wind that they were coming in. They were going to have lunch in the cafeteria, and we said, the cafeteria, really? And so we got it changed to lunch at the mansion, and then they sat in the stateroom on the second floor of the Capitol building as people came in and congratulated them. So we're looking for events to do. I'm looking for some permanent real estate in the Capitol building to have a permanent display that just honors our veterans. Maybe when we lose one, we put something up and say, this is who this person was. But there's no, there's a display for the First Ladies, but there's nothing dedicated to veterans, and I want to change that.
There's a wreath-laying event that's going on this week, for instance, but you're talking about those are temporary things, temporary commemorations.
Yes.
You'd like to see something
I'd like to see something permanent.
Yeah. As a veteran who served the country, who was deployed several times.
Yes, to Desert Storm.
What is that, tell us what that sacrifice is like.
Well, if you haven't been in the military, I don't think you can understand the loss of, I think it's time. I was deployed around this time of year, so I missed Thanksgiving and Christmas. But veterans miss, they'll miss, maybe they're missing birthdays. They're missing their child's first steps or their child's first words. And it's a tremendous sacrifice for the families they leave behind, because now the families are doing without that one member, and I don't think you can understand it unless you either are a military family member or you are a veteran, and it's a tremendous sacrifice, mostly of time, and time is, I think, is one of the most precious gifts we have.
Do you really think about them at this time of year?
I do.
Around the holidays?
I really do, especially since I was away at the holidays, and I was missing time with my family, and I really do. And so I hope that your viewers will maybe take the time to do cards and letters and care packages, because I can tell you, if there are veterans, if there are military people who are deployed, they appreciate just the touch from home, the note from home.
Lieutenant Governor Jenean Hampton is with us on Kentucky Newsmakers. In a little bit, we're also going to meet Richmond's new police chief. We'll be back with the Lieutenant Governor, our final moments, in just a moment on Kentucky Newsmakers. Welcome back to WKYT's Kentucky Newsmakers, and we're having a visit today with the Lieutenant Governor of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, Jenean Hampton, Republican. She was elected last year and has been in office this year. Of course, as is also said, a heartbeat away from the governorship. We'll talk to her a little bit about that. But I want to know what has been the most enjoyable part of this to you in serving as the Lieutenant Governor? Oh,
by far, it's the visits to the schools. I've been asked to share my personal story with students, first graders on up, and it's so enjoyable. I always leave time for Q&A, but I've been asked to share my personal story, my rise from poverty, the speed bumps that I hit, just decision points along the way, just my whole journey, my whole career, the arc of my whole career. But as I said, I always leave time for Q&A, and the questions are informative. I had some first graders in Bowling Green who want to know if I could do something to get corn dogs back on the lunch menu. And then you get questions from high school students. They're paying a little bit more attention, and so sometimes they ask about things they've heard on social media or in the news. Fourth and fifth graders seem to be the sweet spot because they're so interested and they're curious about what I do, and what the government does, and what does a lieutenant governor do, and what my day is like, and you know, what are my cats' names. I mean, you know, the questions vary, but it's so enjoyable. It truly is.
It really can be an interesting job, and it's what you make of it.
It is.
Right?
It absolutely is, because the Kentucky Constitution doesn't define any hard and fast job descriptions for the lieutenant governor. So it comes down to whatever Governor Bevan and I agree upon. And obviously, my #1 task is to support him however he needs me. But beyond that, so I support the administration, and so I get to work on entrepreneurship and aerospace and aviation, get to help foster that industry here in Kentucky. And in fact, I helped start a new organization, the Kentucky Aerospace Industry Consortium. I sit on that as a non-voting member, but it's just to help grow the industry. That's Kentucky's largest export. Most people don't know that.
And as you alluded to, the most important role is to be prepared to become a governor at a moment's notice.
That's correct.
What do you do to be sure that you are ready for that thing that you hope never happens, the unforeseen situation that might require you to lead the Commonwealth?
Well, the governor and I talk frequently, and then I just try to keep abreast of what's going on in the Commonwealth, and I try to be his ears and eyes around the Commonwealth, because I get out a little bit more than he does. And so I talk about the things I see, and bring back some lessons learned, pass on some messages from people, and so just try to stay aware of the major issues that impact the Commonwealth.
Do you have regular meetings with him?
I do.
Yeah. The governor said last week that he really has no interest in going to the White House and serving in the Trump administration or in running for the Senate, and pretty much indicated that he is likely to run for re-election in 2019. Are you likely to be his running mate again?
Well, I hope so. If he'll have me, I would be honored to serve again.
What is it like to do the first statewide campaign? You had run for state representative, right?
That's correct, down in Bowling Green, just 2 years ago.
And so you're in a district, and then all of a sudden, the Commonwealth, the entire map, is where you needed to be. What was that like?
Certainly a long, grueling campaign, although I must have found it exhilarating, because I don't know why I was not exhausted at the end of the campaign, but the weeks were, it was 6 days a week, anywhere from three to 6 events a day. Just 12 hours plus a day, but I so enjoyed the whole process that maybe I just didn't notice that it was how hard the work was, and I truly did enjoy getting out and meeting folks in the agriculture community and the private sector community, manufacturing. Schools, just talking to and visiting counties that I had not been to. Now, when I was a box sales rep, my sales territory was the western half of Kentucky, so I got over there pretty frequently. But this time it was a different vein.
Is politics a calling for you at this point?
I think it is. It definitely is. It definitely is.
So what might be next if? Whether you are Lieutenant Governor, the running mate again, or you do something else, do you have your eye on something you would like to do?
I do not have my eye on anything. I'll just have to pray on it, just like I prayed on this position.
Lieutenant Governor Jenean Hampton, thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
Merry Christmas.
And same to you.
Thank
and
you.
Happy New Year to you. And we'll be back in just a moment. We're going to meet with Richmond's new Police Chief, James Ebert, and find out what's going on there on Kentucky Newsmakers in a moment. Welcome back to Kentucky Newsmakers on WKYT. Rapidly growing Richmond is the home of Eastern Kentucky University, the busy Richmond Center shopping area, and about 35,000 permanent residents. The city limits sprawl for miles east to west and north to south. Richmond's police department is busy and in recent years has been in the news over the line of duty death of Officer Daniel Ellis and a shortage of officers because of departures and retirements. The city has been working to address the pay scale that's been seen as good for starting starting officers, not necessarily for those who dedicate their careers to the department. This year's search for a new police chief led to outside the department and to Frankfort, where James Ebert was working when he agreed to move to the Richmond Police Department and take charge. Chief Ebert has said he believes in community policing, where officers get to know and partner with residents in fighting crime. And Chief Ebert is joining us on Kentucky Newsmakers. Thanks for coming.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
There were challenges for the Richmond Police Department going in. You knew that, and you decided to seek this opportunity. Why did you want the job as Richmond Police Chief?
Well, like you said, we understood going in there would be some certain challenges that were built in, but I'm a person that really strives on overcoming challenges, and I think Richmond has all the attributes of being a super successful police department. And we're right behind the Department of Criminal Justice Training Center, and one of the most prevalent criminal justice trainings in Eastern Kentucky University. So those are two platforms that we can use to build a recruiting base and work on retention to develop a stellar department to serve the community. One
of the things, Chief, that I've heard you already do is talk about reaching out to the resources that are available to you, to the nearby training centers, you say at EKU, to other academy and operations around the nation that can help bring some expertise.
Yes, one of the things we've been looking at is with EKU is to reach out to them to maybe start an internship program within the police department, with the hopes that some of those people that participate will go on to be police officers either with the Richmond Police Department or somewhere in the central Kentucky area.
All of our Kentucky communities face a complicated world today. Drugs are an underlying factor in so many of the crimes that are out there. How does a community get after that?
I think it's a holistic approach. One thing's for sure, we can't just lock people up to solve a problem. So the solution comes not just from the law enforcement side of it, but also reaching out with other groups within the community to see what services they can provide for rehabilitation and support and family support networks as well.
Does the public need to step up and help you in that regard?
I think it's always best when all hands are pulling in the same direction. You know, the simple citation or arrest doesn't make someone not addicted to drugs. So a lot of it involves counseling and medical advice that they can seek from out of the preview of the law enforcement area. So a whole community approach is always the best way when dealing with drug problems.
Is it fair to say that some of this is larger than any one community can deal with, that it's going to take a state or maybe even federal effort to deal with the drug abuse problem we have?
I think that's absolutely a fair assessment. I mean, it's the idea to eliminate drugs at the point of entry, obviously along a lot of times the borders, but then filtering all the way down throughout the different states and local region as well.
You have talked about community policing. That's a model that you talked about is apparently in your interview process and shortly after you were sworn in as chief just a few weeks ago. How does that work to tamp down crime and build trust within the community?
I think what you look for in community policing is the opportunity to build relationships with different sectors within any given society. In Richmond, we try to reach out and get as much input and see what necessarily is the crime problems that they feel are number one. Just because we may feel, let's say, traffic is a number one problem, they may think, you know, minor thefts is a number one problem. So adjusting the way we provide services to the community to meet the community's needs is an essential part of community-oriented policing.
You lived in Richmond once before. You've come back about 15 years later. It has grown tremendously, right?
It has absolutely grown tremendously. It was 2002 when I lived there. While I was attending the Law Enforcement Academy, and now you can look, it's almost doubled in size, it feels like.
You have a very busy police department, and officer pay has been an issue we alluded to that in the intro to this. Is that, in your view, being adequately addressed at this point?
I think the process is in there. We have a new commission that's going to be seated here shortly, and with that, I look forward to in-depth conversations on ways to come up with solutions, because we obviously want to recruit, but we also want to retain the best and brightest officers we can get for Richmond, Kentucky.
Richmond is authorized to have 60 officers by the city. Some say that the federal standards might say that it needs more than that, but you have 51 right now. Given the most recent hirings and resignations that have gone on, you also have specialized departments, detectives, and other units. How do you keep enough people on the street patrolling?
It comes into creative scheduling. What we've done, especially on second shift, is we analyze the call volume that we have month to month, and we may adjust our manpower to cover the high volume of calls.
Many officers have vowed to never forget Officer Daniel Ellis and his family, and it's been remarkable the way the department has supported his widow and his son. To what extent is his legacy still an important part of the police department?
Oh, it's every day. When you walk in the front foyer, there's a tribute picture that's hanging right in our front foyer, and then recently we've added basically a case of mementos around Ellis that he had, and we strive every year to keep his memory fresh. We reach out to the family and keep them in our prayers all the time, and we look to support them throughout the process of going through this trial.
Is that going to be a difficult time for all involved?
I think it is. It's not only for the family, but for the officers themselves. I said, obviously, when you have some event like that happen in your department, it's not easily that you can move on with your life and move on. So I think the opportunity for us to watch the justice system work and hopefully go to the correct resolution will bring peace and comfort to the family and officers as well.
Seems there's always a spike in thefts, especially right at the holidays. And right now, you've had a number of vehicle break-ins, other problems throughout the city. Advice you would give people here over the next days and weeks, is that normal trend is there? I
think one of the biggest things we can kind of go through is ask people to make sure they lock their cars. That may sound simple enough, but a lot of times what we're finding in these thefts is there's no damage to get into the cars. It's actually they accidentally leave the doors unlocked. And then the second thing I would ask is make sure you please take out any valuables or firearms from the cars. And by all means, if you have Christmas presents, take those out of the cars too, so any would-be burglars or thefts that happen to walk by don't have temptation to get into those cars.
Chief James Ebert, thanks for coming. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, and we'll see you again. And thanks for being with us on WKYT's Kentucky Newsmakers. You can follow me at KY Newsmakers on Twitter. We'll give you some updates on Kentucky politics and other observations. Join us bright and early this week on WKYT This Morning as we get ready for Christmas at the end of the week, and you make it a good one.